Clock, you sounded as though you were in the cathedral. And this is a cathedral. And thank you for being here. I want to welcome again each and every one of you this morning. And for those who don't know, for the last 4 weeks, we've been talking about the book, Edwin Gaines' book, The 4 Spiritual Laws of Prosperity. And those 4 laws are, number 1, tithing. Now, the first Sunday that we talked about tithing, and we started this series, it snowed. And there were only 9 people here who didn't know we were closed because they were visitors. And I said, I'm going to talk to you about tithing. And they all left. No, that's not true. Anyway, so she talks about the idea of tithing. Tithing of time, tithing of talent, and tithing of treasure. Each one individually, yet collectively. And the power in that. Then the next week we talked about the power of planning. Not just planning like putting something on paper, but instead planning through allowing ourselves to be guided by Spirit, to be guided by God, if you would, to discern what is ours to do, and then to turn it over to the universe. Because when we do that, the universe will bring to us all the resources we need in order to make that plan come to be able to demonstrate and manifest what we're planning to do and become. Last week we had Ron Chapman who came, did a great job on forgiveness. And that is one of the spiritual laws. We have to learn to forgive. It's one of the toughest things for us to do. I asked a person one time, which is toughest, tithing or forgiveness? And they said, oh, forgiveness is much tougher, okay? And some people went, I'm not really sure. But anyway, it can be a challenge. But the idea of forgiveness is that we do it on a regular basis, that we make a commitment to do it on a regular basis. Because you see, if we want to live in the overflow of life, if we want our lives to be rich and full, then what we really need to do is create and live these 4 powers, the fourth of which is finding divine purpose. In order, again, to live in that overflow, we have to have an abundance consciousness, and that takes commitment. Abundance consciousness, prosperity consciousness, and commitment go together. Because if we're not willing to make the commitment, then really nothing will happen. Edwin says we must commit to giving consistently, saving consistently, planning consistently, and using affirmative prayer, which includes a disciplined time for contemplation and meditation. She goes on to say, it takes commitment to not tithe just once in a while, but every time money flows into your life. It takes commitment to set goals and then move outside your comfort zone. It takes commitment to forgive yourself and others. It's important to have a daily practice. I want you to hear this, a daily practice of commitment, of forgiveness. And the reason it is because you see, when we let it go, we say, oh, no problem, I'm going to forgive them maybe. Or they did me wrong and I'll get over it. But when we do that, we start to build up a sense of separation between ourselves and others. And when we see that sense of separation, you see, it's really hard for us to see the Christ within ourselves and behold the Christ in the other person. And therefore, we get confused, we get frustrated, and we find ourselves kind of out of alignment, if you would, with God and with the laws of the universe. And so when we have that consistency of forgiveness every day, forgiveness, being so mindful we can forgive in the moment what we think we have to forgive, which is usually ourselves. When we're able to do that, we're able to let go of the stuff. We don't create baggage, and we're able to move through life holding people in unconditional love. Now, I have 3 stories that I'd like to share with you that have to do with this idea of commitment. These are stories from Edwin Gaines and other people that I have met. Edwin Gaines says that commitment is extremely important, obviously. And she tells a story, kind of a cute story. I heard her share it with me many years ago. Mildred was kind of a little old church lady who went to a church where Edwin Gaines was speaking. And Edwin Gaines had this new idea that she was excited about. Edwin Gaines wanted to see Halley's Comet in the best way she could in the perfect spot on Earth. And she was told that if you go to the South Pacific, you'll get the best view of Halley's Comet. Now, since it only comes every 70 years, and she was about 50 years old then, she figured she wasn't going to see it again. So she wanted to have that perfect view. The only challenge she had at that time is she didn't have the money to do it. She didn't know where the money would come from. She had just come out of seminary. And when you first come out of seminary, you really don't have any money to speak of, okay? Many times. And so what Edwene did is she came up with this idea, somewhat novel, not so novel today, but novel then, that what she would do is see if she could figure out how to take a cruise to the South Pacific and be able to witness Halley's Comet. But without money, she said, what do I do? So she called up a cruise director and said, if I want to put together a group to go to the South Pacific, how many people will it take for me to get a free trip? He said, 18. She said, okay, I got my goal, 18 people to sign up, and she had about 6 months beforehand. So she started to invite people on this trip. The caveat was you had to put down $1,000 up front, and then you'd have the rest of the time to put the other $2,000 together. I mean, we're talking about the 70s, guys. You can tell that because we're talking about $3,000 for a cruise to the South Pacific, including air, okay? But anyway, what happened is that she had people sign up, and Mildred came up to her and handed her an envelope and said, I'm going to go on this trip. I just want you to know that. And Edwene says, that's wonderful. Well, Edwene says she doesn't normally just count money right as soon as people give it to her. She waits till the next day. And so she opened Mildred's application, and there was a check for $10. And Edwene said she must have made a mistake. She must not have heard me right or something. She must have written the check wrong. So she calls Mildred. She said, Mildred, I got this $10 check here, and I don't know if you remember, but I said $1,000. Did you make a mistake writing the check? Mildred said, I didn't make a mistake whatsoever. I've only got $10 to give you right now. I'm going to do it on payments. And Edwene says, well, are you going to be able to do it in a timely fashion? She said, I think so. She said, not only I think so, I am going to go on that trip with great determination in her mind. So anyway, 2 weeks later, Edwene got another check for $7.50. Edwene says, this is going the wrong way, but that's okay. I'm going to hold in there. And over the few months' time, Mildred had sent in $97 to go on this $3,000 trip. And Edwene called her again just a month before the trip and said, Mildred, I really don't want to hurt your feelings, but this isn't going to work. And Mildred said, you're not hurting my feelings because I'm going on the trip. And Edwene said, well, I didn't want to hurt her feelings. I really didn't want to say, no, you can't go, so I just kind of let it go. And she said, well, if the trip takes place, I'll send you your money back. Mildred said, you don't have to send me my money back because I'm going on this trip. And so Edwene, who is a prosperity consciousness person who believes anything can happen, didn't believe this was going to happen. 2 days before they were set to fly to the South Pacific and then take a boat out, one of Edwene's closest friends who had already paid for the trip called and said, Edwene, I've got to be in court next week. I can't get out of it, and I can't go on the trip. And you know, it's so late, I know I'm not going to get a refund. Do you have anybody who might like to go on the trip in my place? Edwene called Mildred 2 days before the trip and said, Mildred? Mildred said, don't worry, my bags are packed. They're sitting at the door. I'm ready to go. I'm going to go on the trip. And Mildred didn't know it at that time, so Edwene shared it with her. And sure enough, Mildred ended up going on the trip. See what commitment to an idea can do? If you really stick with it. So the next time somebody offers you an opportunity to go somewhere for $5,000, give them $10 if you really want to go, okay? And start the process. So that was Mildred's commitment to her dream of going to a place. And what happens is every time we have a dream, really are committed to it, really are into it, what happens is the universe provides the resources, some kind of mysterious way. I'm sure if I broke you down in small groups, you could each share a story, something like that. As you look at what's happened in your life, as Spirit has blessed you, as you have opened yourself up to all the good that God is. Now, the second thing that Edwene teaches is in commitment that we have to verbalize it. Now, don't get confused because I know that you've heard, and I teach it myself, that when you have a new idea, don't share it with everybody. Because they're going to tell you you're crazy. They're going to tell you you can't do it. They're going to tell you what Edwin was telling Mildred, you don't have the money. But anyway, at some point, though, you are ready to verbalize it. You have been working on this dream. And the power of verbalizing a dream is it brings to you, again, the resources necessary. Edwin was teaching in Southern California, and one of the things that happened was she was teaching this idea of verbalizing your dream. And towards the middle of the seminar, a woman stood up and said, I have not shared this with but one or two people, but I want to verbalize my dream. And her dream was to create a halfway house for young people. Not those who were coming out of jail, not those who were put into a hospital or an substance abuse facility, but those that could be identified early on and were brought into this halfway house. And she said, what I want to do is set it up, and it's being set up so they can be taught how valuable they are. They can taught their self-worth. They can be taught that they can overcome anything when they go inside. And she said, and I've gotten the house. I've gotten all kinds of things. But I am $13,000 short from opening that up. I just wanted to verbalize that to you and let you know what my need is. Not soliciting people whatsoever. And I know that the universe, she said, I know the universe will answer my prayer. After the seminar was over, a man walked up to her and said, that's something I've always wanted to support, what you're talking about. How wonderful. And he wrote her a check, yes, for $13,000. Okay? So when we verbalize, we again bring in from the universe and attract to ourselves really what is already there. We just become aware of it. And with that awareness, we bring all the resources that we need into being. There is another story that I want to share because what Edwin says is that we have to give out of joy. We have to not just give out of joy, we have to see ourselves as joyous. We have to see ourselves as children of God, of heirs to all that God is. And when we do that, then we are able to, in essence, become joyful. There was a guy named Bob. Bob was a successful businessman. He had a very successful business that he got tired of, and he wanted to sell it. And about 3 months after he put it out on the market, a company came in and started to negotiate. They negotiated for about 2 months with the brokers. And all of a sudden, this company stopped negotiating. They were talking about $7 million. They stopped negotiating. They stopped taking phone calls. Nothing. They wouldn't talk to them. And Bob and the brokers had no idea what the problem was, if they could even fix it. Well, Bob really got upset about that. He was angry with the company. He was angry that he had to go to work each day. He was angry that he was still doing what he was doing when he wanted to let go and get out of the way and be what he called free. Well, Bob had come into a New Thought church. And while he was in that New Thought ministry, what happened was he started to understand certain things. He started to understand the law of tithing. And he decided that he would do that and start to do that because he thought it was good for him and for his family. He wanted to do it. The second thing he started to understand was the power of forgiveness. And you know, he had to start forgiving that company for not buying his business. He had to start being joyful in the moment and not look at his employees like they were trouble, they were in the way. They were messing up his life because he had to come to the office every day when he didn't want to. He had to change his focus on what was happening in his life. And as he did, he became joyful, he said. He started going to the office, and he was really with zeal, okay, with enthusiasm. His employees were wondering, what's wrong with him? And they thought, well, maybe he's not going to sell the business now. He's so, renewed with this enthusiasm. Well, about 6 months later, the company that had been pursuing buying his company called up. And they said to the brokers, we went through something that might have been a financial crisis. It wasn't, but we thought it might be. So we just had to stop and focus on taking care of the issue that was before us. And we want to buy his company now. And so they sent them new financials. And that company offered him $10 million for his company. And he said, I really was joyful. But he said, if I hadn't have learned to live life joyously, even though everything wasn't going the way I thought it should go, when I learned to do that, I was in joy. I was joyous. And I gave in joy. I served in joy. And I supported my employees with joy. The idea of being joyful in everything that we do, no matter what it looks like. And again, we can only do that through the power of forgiveness. Jesus said, keep on asking and you will receive what you ask for. Keep on seeking and you will find. Keep on knocking and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives. Everyone who seeks finds. And to everyone who knocks, the door will be open. He also said in Scripture, one other place, ask believing. That's the commitment part. Ask believing. And when we do that, we open ourselves up. And as we open ourselves up, we become mindful. We become aware of what's happening around us. We become mindful when we say something or do something that hurts somebody else. We become mindful when we're allowed to forgive ourselves and even forgive others and see them as a teacher rather than as an enemy. And as we do that, believing, then we ask, we seek. And Jesus said, you shall find. And that is certainly the truth. The other thing we need to do in order to maintain this prosperity consciousness, this consciousness of abundance, this consciousness that I'm going to live in the overflow, not the undertow. Okay? And when I can live in the overflow, then I can say what Jesus said. So don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today. Right? And sometimes we get rid of the trouble, or what we think is trouble, and then we are worried about it coming back tomorrow. And guess what happens? What happens? It comes back tomorrow, right? Because what we focus on, what we believe in, what we're willing to step up to, depends upon how we use our powers. These young people this morning are here sharing with us, and I really appreciate it. I remember when some of you were 6 years old, 5 years old. Yeah, I'm getting there, okay? And now here you are, young adults. But you're more than young adults. I am so impressed. Josh and Merritt, Nadia, is that correct? Yeah, and Raquel. Roselle. Huh? Ronzel. I'll get it, Ronzel. Thank you, okay? And the others who are participating, okay? All of you guys, I want you to know that. I didn't know you since you were 5, but I knew a few of them. One of the things that we teach here, and I hope you understand, is you guys not only are loving, but you are pure love. That's what you are. That's what you've been created in. That's how God created you, as love. And when we start to see ourselves that way, we see the good in ourselves. When we start to see ourselves in that manner, we then are able to become the love that we can share with our friends and our family. So remember, you are love. And boy, did you demonstrate it this morning. Thank each and every one of you for it. Didn't they? Didn't they demonstrate it? Thank you. So let go, let God, be joyful, be clear, be willing to verbalize, and believe with all your heart that everything you need is here for you to complete your dream and to allow you to have that life of abundance. Thank you.